Today is Tuesday, August 19th, 2025, and the time is 5 p.m. I will now call to order the meeting of the Victorville City Council and the same council sitting as the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, the city as a housing asset successor, Joint Powers Finance Authority, and the Victorville Water District. Madam Clerk, will you kindly call the roll?
Councilmember Godin.
Here.
Councilmember Irving.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Here.
Mayor Becerra.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, public comments for closed session. Any request to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
At this time, I'll turn it over to declaration of closed session items to Mr. DeBernowski.
Thank you, Mayor Becerra. We have one item this evening. It's anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D4, and it's to discuss whether or not the city wants to engage and initiate litigation. To the extent there's reportable action, we will report it either at the conclusion of the closed session or at the commencement of the regular 6 o'clock session.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we are now recessed to closed session, and open session will resume at 6 p.m.
Turn on the mics.
Welcome, everyone, and good evening. Today is Tuesday, August 19th, 2025, and the time is 6 p.m. The regular meeting of the following will come to order. The Victorville City Council and the same council sitting as the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, the city as a housing asset successor, Joint Powers Finance Authority, and the Victorville Water District. Madam Clerk, will you kindly call the roll?
Councilmember Godian,
Here.
Councilmember Irving,
Here.
Councilmember Jones,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Here.
Mayor Becerra.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Closed session announcements by our city attorney, Mr. DeBernowski.
Thank you, Mayor Becerra. We had one item this evening. It was anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D4. Anticipated litigation as to whether or not to initiate litigation. At this time, there is no reportable action with respect to that item.
Thank you very much, sir. At this time, if you could stand for the invocation of the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be led tonight by our Pastor Joseph Garibay of Calvary Chapel in Victorville, and our pledge will be led by Captain Jerry Davenport.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. It's nice to see you guys again. It's been some time. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Father, we thank you for this time, Lord. We thank you for this opportunity to be here. Lord, we know that in your word it says everyone must submit to governing authorities, for all authority comes from you. And in those positions of authority have been placed by you, God. We know that you are truth and love, and we want to thank you for placing each board member here this evening in their respective places, Lord. We thank you for that. We thank you for giving them a servant's heart, Lord, to serve their city in kindness and love and respect towards each other and the many residents they serve, Lord. We thank you. We ask that your presence fill this room so that decisions can be made morally, justly, and unselfishly, Lord. Be with everyone here that is listening, watching, and actively taking part in this meeting. Be with those here that will be addressing their concerns or thoughts regarding their city. Be here with the city council, and may your Holy Spirit fill this room. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we will go with special presentation. Presentation of our new hires and promotions. Turn it over to you, Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This council is well aware of the many accomplishments achieved over the years that have effectively improved and expanded the public services we offer to the residents of the city of Victorville. As we have done so and continue to do so, it's important to recognize the staff of this organization, both those that have achieved the milestone of promotion or as new hire with this great organization. And so with that, we'd like to recognize with your presence the promotions and the new hires over this last quarter. And leading the presentation is Heather Barber, the Director of Human Resources. Also, we have Assistant Director Sandra Bostic, Assistant Director of Human Resources Sandra Bostic to join her. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of our council. I'm here this evening to recognize our new hires and promotions for the months of April, May, and June. First, we're going to recognize the newest members of our city team. They will each be called up to stand in front of the dais, presented with a pin, and then I would invite all of the council members down to take a photo with the newest members of our City of Victorville team. All right, so new hires. We have Rebecca Blankenship, Customer Service Representative with our Finance Department. Christopher Gonzalez, Sweeper Operator with Public Works.
One or each one.
Daniel Best, Assistant Director of Water with Water. Daisy Oxley, Facilities Administrative Technician with Community Services. Matthew Highland, GIS Coordinator with Information Technology. Jose Villacorta, Warehouse Clerk with Public Works Water. Benjamin Luca, Environmental Programs Manager with Public Works. Thon Nguyen, Technology Coordinator with Information Technology. Aaron Walker, Assistant Planner with Planning. Dina Gallegos, Community Services Coordinator with Community Services. And our last one today is Edward Rue, Public Works Manager with Public Works. And this is our new hires. And council, if you'd like to come down and take a photo. Your application. Hi, Bob. Don't go far, Liz. Okay, now we are going to recognize our promoted employees. I will be calling each of them up to stand in front of the dais. And at the end of the presentation, we would again like to invite all of the council members to take a photo with our group of promoted employees. And we will start with Alberto Garcia, maintenance worker with Community Services. Frank Baker, line locator with Public Works. Anthony Manriquez, equipment operator with Public Works. You'll be alone for just a moment. David Vega, EMS manager with Fire. Levi Bybee, senior maintenance worker with Public Works. Katie McDaniel, senior customer service rep with Finance. Daniel Radovich, senior public works inspector. Stephanie Landa, fire inspector with building. Martha Correas, planning technician with planning. Masood Zarifeh, Windows Server Administrator with Information Technology. And Felipe Justo, Payroll Supervisor with Finance. And if we can have our council members for a photo. That's the end of our presentation. Thank you everyone for joining this evening.
No one said you had to leave. Oh, goodness. Oh, he bought his mama flowers. Look at him. You know, works a good job. Oh, that got empty quick. Madam Clerk, will you present the agenda and any revisions there too?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can we move back to special presentations and do the
Oh, yeah,
second bullet point?
Yeah, Oh, sorry. I was ready to miss over. 2025 fireworks enforcement presentation. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This presentation is one that we've done with you for a few years now, and typically we've done it after 4th of July to share with you, of course, what we experienced during 4th of July and leading up to it. And I think I should preface this presentation before George Duran comes up and speaks. This is one of probably the proudest experiences we have as a city when it comes to embracing collaboration amongst all of the departments. And George will touch on all of the different departments and all of the different individuals that get together and basically pregame not only the proactive enforcement efforts that typically start around Memorial Day and then ultimately end right around the 4th of July or shortly after the 4th of July, really intending to create greater awareness that fireworks in Victorville are not permissible, they're not legal, but then also the unfun part of it of having to actually cite in the event of noncompliance. So with that, we do have a presentation led by your code enforcement official, Mr. George Duran. He will ask Fire Chief Bobby Clemmer also to join during the presentation. So with that, George.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Thank you for allowing us to present to you this presentation on fireworks. We're quite proud, as we have every year, and every year it seems like we're always finding new ways to address this issue. And yeah, our fire chief will join us here in just a bit towards the end here. I'll start first with identifying how we get started and quickly walk you through this process. Preparation is key. We start roughly around April, and the departments that you see represented up there, Public Works Department, our Public Information, our IT Department, our Business License Division, all play a key role in preparing for this. As an example, our licensing department will provide us addresses of rental properties. As we'll talk here shortly in the presentation, we cover a noticing procedure and process for our rental business license owners. Of course, our city attorney's office ready to assist us with potentially appealed citations, as folks have a right for due process, of course. Our Public Works Department plays a key role in deploying our advertising approaches in bus stops and buses as well. Our banners and our increasingly 6 electronic reader boards, which we'll touch on just a bit. On the field enforcement side, of course, our police department plays a key role in assisting us with escalated encounters, perhaps, in fireworks sales, of course, and of course our code compliance and animal services division play the primary role with follow-up for complaints. This year, specifically this year, our fire prevention division played an absolute key role, which I'll touch on shortly in the presentation. I wanted to touch on the enhancements that we did this year. Every year, again, we touch on what worked, what didn't, what areas should we focus on, where should we mobilize our electronic reader boards. This year we increased it by 2. We used to use 4, and basically these areas are identified based on the number of citations issued year prior. Obviously traffic patterns, we want to make sure that these are areas that the public will see. A notable approach that the code enforcement officers do, specifically when challenging appeals for folks that claim that they didn't light any fireworks, is referencing those 6 locations. We understand that most folks that live in Victorville are probably going to come across those areas, and so that plays a key role in our reporting when we're before perhaps a hearing officer or a judge, explaining that there was prior notice given in some way, shape, or form, and this is very, very important. Our public information team revised our "If You Light It, We'll Write It" campaign, really kind of fine-tuning the text to make sure it's a little bit more relevant to what we're seeing. And of course, the pictures were also updated. Also new this year is the use of 360 cameras. New technology for us, very, very diverse, very useful. Basically, as you'll see, there's a picture here later in the presentation that shows it being mounted on a vehicle, but it really just allows us to use that video for, to challenge potential appeals when a person or a resident may say they didn't do it. We also, again, teamed up with our public information folks to feature a segment in our What's the TVV aired on June 2nd for fireworks. As one of our code enforcement supervisors and our enforcement manager just had a very candid discussion and really trying to advocate and discourage the use of fireworks. We also, they helped us, our PIO as well, helped us with a with local TV advertising. It's actually 15 seconds long. A very quick localized segment for local channels, I believe. And note, again, this year we really did focus on fireworks sales. And this really kind of happened both with a focused effort and based on just awareness from our police department, where in those three situations, we had a focused effort on trying to see and find social media posts of illegal fireworks sales. I won't go into much detail as to how it is, but it is a little creative as to how folks will advertise fireworks sales. We happen to also kind of patrol parking lots, and we came across a situation in one of our busy retailer parking lots where a person, as you see pictured there on the left side, was actually actively selling fireworks. And in coordination with our police department, our police officers, of course, aware of our local prohibition, came across a business that they were indirectly not related to fireworks investigating and came across fireworks that they were selling. Our, of course, preparation and our preparation segment, but in respects to our administrative citation and criminal citation options, that remains unchanged. It is progressive, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. This year, I will tell you is that 4th of July, we had a situation where we had to escalate to a $3,000 level in one single location. So that does happen. This is part of our public outreach, and the notice to the left side is the notice that's really sent to rental property owners. Every year, we started this in 2022, and when we started this in 2022, every year it seems like we get calls from property owners telling us that they've spoken to their tenant. That's what we want to see. That's what we want to hear. It's great. They're being proactive, and that's the intent of this letter, is to hopefully connect them with their tenants and forewarn them. We also sent out notices to our utility payers as well, in a total of just over almost 35,000 notices. Continuing with our public outreach efforts, again, we placed 6 electronic reader boards in key areas, connected and post some advertisements on bus stops. Also new this year, again, in coordination with our fire prevention folks, is we teamed up with our animal services events at Costco and took advantage of setting up a focused effort towards fireworks, really to try to bring awareness and connect folks with the usage of our app. It was just a meet and greet, and I think with fire prevention's presence there, it really did make that connection. And we continued, of course, with our advertising on social media. Impressive, I think, is the 107 views. That means that we actually amplified that this year versus kind of doing these segmented digital reaches. Basically, was citywide. So I think that contributes to that number. Firework reports. As we see, usually week 6 represents the week leading towards 4th of July. Saw an increase. We want an increase. That means that awareness and usage of the app is pretty solid. And so I think you'll see the citations that were issued kind of represents the reactions that we had to the 2025 numbers there. So again, 4th of July this year, as you see pictured there, is the team that was gathered on 4th of July. I was pretty impressed with, again, the support and cooperation from our fire prevention folks. They played a very key role here primarily in when it came to contacting residents that were using fireworks. We teamed them up with a code enforcement officer where possible. And what we found in those interactions was that they were less agitated. They were more accepted. It seemed like they made the connection that it's just not the city code enforcement, it's that fire actually has an interest in reducing the impacts. And it just made it a lot smoother. Other areas of improvement that we employed is the use of our own internal technicians that are here at City Hall. We used a code enforcement officer and a code enforcement technician throughout the night to vet these calls, to expedite the case creation. It expedited the property owner research. We needed that where perhaps the tenant was uncooperative, unwilling to give information, and so we err then to cite the property owner. And years prior, that took some time. That created the need to research county data and pull that up and really extract that information. This really was a clearinghouse for us to quickly establish the case, quickly establish the property information, and move on to issue the citation, which also translated to increased officer safety. You know, there was not this stale amount of time while we were writing the citation while people were becoming agitated. The slide here represents the resources that we used. 3 supervisors, 4th of July, this is 4th of July, 9 code enforcement officers, 4 fire prevention inspectors. We had an animal control officer pretty busy that night. Not part of the unit, but certainly supporting the effort with respect to loose animals. And as I stated, 2 code enforcement support staff. Pretty busy night, 158 police dispatch calls, and we coordinated with police, with dispatch that night so they could filter those calls over to the units that were assigned to address fireworks. And that has really an indirect and direct effect to police services. It really does allow them to respond to other higher priority calls or related priority calls as well to fireworks. And quite a bit of fireworks confiscated as well. And as you'll see in the chart coming up, the 65 citations is an increase over the years prior. And the map, of course, represents the yellow are the citations issued on 4th of July, and the orange are citations issued since the beginning of our program. Very large concentration on the west side, and I didn't touch on that in the beginning of the presentation, but we did segment some areas of the city, and we try to stay in those areas to have representation and address areas so that we didn't have any areas that perhaps weren't being supported by our efforts. But certainly a large majority of our force was on the west side. And yeah, these pictures are the same. They're not 3 different trucks, but it's the total confiscation of fireworks. 360 pounds for the year. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Clement.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I wanted to highlight some of the pre-planning that we did for this year's 4th of July. Last year, was probably one of the busiest single days of my entire career as far as how busy it was and the amount of fires and stuff. So we put a lot of effort into pre-planning this year. With staffing, we upstaffed 1 additional Type 3 engine with 3 personnel, an additional water tender. Every chief officer was working -1, so we had 4 additional, and then we had SCLA's water tender that aided that evening. Some of the operational changes that we took into effect, we temporarily suspended the auto aid agreement with Adelanto to prevent, which last year a big hindrance to us was the amount of calls in Adelanto, so we stopped that for auto aid. We still would send mutual aid, but that had to come through a process for a request. This year, the vegetation, the grass size actually decreased from about knee-high last year to about no more than ankle-high. So a lot of times the fires that we responded to were essentially out by the time we got there. So that was a help from no fault of our own, but it was nice to have that opportunity. And then probably the biggest operational change that we made was the whole entire high desert, the entire county is in one dispatch center. So if you start opening up the floodgate for multiple engines going to a single call, it just strips the entire county of resources. And that's what happened last year. You'd have somebody going en route to a call, and they would balance it to a full vegetation assignment, which was multiple engines, the chief, and all that. And then by the time that happened 4 or 5 times, there was no resources left. So we put an emphasis on getting all the way on scene before you could request any additional resources. And a lot of times it looked bigger than it was by the time they got there. So that was a huge benefit from a pre-planning standpoint. From 2024 to 2025, you'll notice the biggest obvious factors. Last year, the wildland fires in this 3-day period were 47 versus this year it was only 15. You notice the EMS calls are exactly the same, which is kind of strange. They ended up working out exactly the same. And then other calls, there's some residential structure fire calls, power lines down, those types of things. Those are listed in the other category. But that was the biggest obvious was the wildland fires substantially decreased this year. And more than anything, I want to thank George and his staff for all the work that went into the pre-planning on their side. I feel the whole entire city was far safer than the outlying areas, thanks to their efforts as well. So available for any questions for myself or George. If you guys have any questions, we'd be glad to take them at this time. Thank you.
Don't go nowhere, Mr. Clemmer. Madam Clerk, 2 minutes for questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Irving, do you want to start us out?
Well, I don't really have any questions, but this report was very impressive, and I think that the level of collaboration is notable. It's obvious that you put a lot of work into planning and preparation, and I've seen the signs. The education to me is key. This is a positive presentation and a report, and I want to say thank you. I agree. I think we were safer.
Thank you.
I know it wasn't time for
That's okay. Councilwoman Godin?
Yeah, I just want to echo Councilmember Irving and say great job to both departments. Great job working together to increase our efforts and our manpower. I like the way, Chief Clemmer, that you restructured the system for that night to be able to respond to calls and use the resources that you needed to use and not more.
Thank you.
So well done on that. I know even in my neighborhood, I heard the car going by saying no fireworks, so it was effective and it worked well. So yeah, good job. Good job.
Councilwoman Jones?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So absolutely 100%. Well, first of all, thank you for the great presentation. Very detailed, very helpful. I have to say, over year, I always think you guys can't do a better job, and here we are. Because I've seen every year the effort has been extremely focused and dedicated and valiant on top of it. And here we go with a new year that you've really upped the ante a bit. So I'm very, very proud of you all, and you should be proud of yourselves too, if I could say, Mr. Metzler. So question, Mr. Duran, on the second violations, is that during a particular season or is it across years?
It's a 12-month period.
It's a 12-month period. Okay. And then on the, Chief Clemmer, on the issue of the temporary suspension of auto aid to Adelanto, was Adelanto and County Fire given advance notice that that was going to happen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do we know if there was any impact negatively to Adelanto as a result of our newest strategy there?
I don't believe so, and it was temporary. We still maintain our auto aid agreement to this day after the 4th of July events.
Okay. And then on the other calls that we responded to, in addition to EMS and wildfires, are those related to fire? Like the medical, well, excuse me, On the medical calls, are they related to fire incidents directly?
Off the top of my head, there's not any, there wasn't any injuries from fireworks or anything like that. George may know better, but there was nothing that came to my attention as far as anybody getting hurt from the fireworks themselves.
Well, I'm extremely happy and proud. Last year, as you all know, I was exceedingly frustrated, given the work that I know you all invested in making our city safer, and yet we still were very burdened by some decisions of folks. And so you've come up with a great plan. It's worked, and look forward to what you're going to always do again. Right? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
I always get to go last. So I want to echo also what everyone said. A couple things. I noticed on the 3rd, I was kind of shocked. Seemed like there was nothing, because my neighborhood, it gets pretty active. But then on the 4th, we did have some stuff going on. I did hear something, and I was watching, I think, the Dodger game, and I went running in the living room where my wife was, and I swear to you, 3 minutes later, one of the cars with the cameras came in my cul-de-sac. And I ran out there to say thank you, and they were gone. But I feel really good. I'm going to give this to a few people because I do get a lot of complaints about the fireworks, and that doesn't reflect on what we've done. But those people also have told me they noticed a big difference this year, and I couldn't be happier. I have dogs, so it gets pretty irritating to me. But I'm just astounded on the fireworks they use now. You'd think you were at the fairgrounds at a show, so I'm sure when those things are up in the air, it's pretty hard to tell where they came from because they go so high in the air. But everybody did a great job, and were our squad units, does that work better with the squads so we don't have to use the engines to go to any medical calls? The squads pretty much just are able to handle that.
The majority of it, there's a handful of different calls that require an engine or truck and the squad, but for the it's been tremendous having the squads from the start as far as the amount of calls they're able to pick up. It drastically reduced the wear and tear and the response on the engines.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, guys.
From me sitting in the neighboring city, I could see that our fireworks, no, not really. Thank you for everything you guys did. You could tell people are listening now to us, and it's no game here. You want to go on the other side. But thank you very much for what you guys are doing. Good job. Thank you for both of you.
Thank you.
Mr. Metzler, great job to you and your team. Okay, I got that done. Here we go. Madam Clerk, will you present the agenda and any revisions there too?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no revisions to the agenda this evening.
Thank you very much. At this time, conflict of interest. Any of my council members have any conflict of interest? I do. I will have to recuse myself from item 1 as I live in close proximity to the sidewalk project on Village Drive. We'll go now to introduction to public comments. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Then, well, I will recuse myself then. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I get the honors. So I'm new at this, so just bear with me, everybody. I'm glad there's not a big crowd in here today. Anyways, 2025 citywide street improvements project approved notice of exemption and award of construction. Mr. Metzger, would you introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. This item involves a number of public improvements, largely roadway related improvements. And in fact, we've taken an opportunity to not only design The four projects that are here, which include two roadway reconstruction projects, one restriping and one sidewalk. We've completed the scope. We actually conducted a public bidding, determined as a part of that process that we would be most effective in trying to bid it all together to try to build some economies of scale and try to get the best pricing available to us. And so with that, this item before you is effectively award of contract for those improvements. We do have a brief presentation considering the significance of this that I think it'd be fair to have your city engineer, Mr. Freddie Bonilla, actually speak to each of the projects so you clearly understand the scope of it and so that also the public has an opportunity to hear in advance of what they'll be seeing out there when we're actually in the right of way. So with that, Mr. Bonilla.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Harriman, members of the council. The item before you this evening is the approval of a notice of exemption and award of contract for what we titled the 2025 citywide street improvement projects that include four separate projects on Ridgecrest Road, Roy Rogers Drive, Green Tree Boulevard, and Village Drive. So this slide shows the different locations citywide, and I'll be going into specifically on each of the items for each project respectively. So the first project is on Ridgecrest Road. The project's limits are from Bear Valley Road to Paiute Avenue. The scope of work of the project involves pavement rehabilitation that is essentially what we call a grind and cap or grind and overlay, where we remove the top 2 inches of the asphalt, do some preparation, then put a asphalt overlay. Essentially replacing the top 2 inches of asphalt. We've also included some additional enhancements in this project. As you can tell in the exhibit there, we are constructing sidewalk improvements between Francesca Road and Bear Valley Road in front of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Every time we do one of these projects, we always take a look at our sidewalk accessibility improvements and where we can improve. We certainly do. That is an example of that. Another item that we've also included is the extension of the Race Center median as you approach Bear Valley Road. This provides additional queuing for left turns onto Bear Valley Road. And then, of course, updating existing curb ramps and drive approaches to meet current ADA and city standards. So that is the first project on Ridgecrest Road. The second project is a pavement reconstruction on Roy Rogers Drive, and I want to just take a few minutes to explain the difference between a pavement reconstruction and a pavement rehabilitation. Whereas on Ridgecrest Road, we're removing the top 2 inches of asphalt and we're leaving the existing subgrade and structural section intact. On Roy Rogers Drive, the geotechnical findings when we went out and we determined that the existing structural section was deficient. And so we couldn't just do a 2-inch grind and cap because that would essentially mean that we're throwing our money away. So we did a full pavement reconstruction. That means we're actually removing all of the asphalt, reconstructing the base, and essentially starting from the ground up. Additionally, we're also including the construction of a Race Center median on Roy Rogers Drive, just east of Civic Drive. Currently, we have some yellow delineators that constantly get hit. So by constructing that median, it'll actually prevent left turns out of the service gas station located at the northeast corner. And of course, accessibility improvements, upgrading the curb ramps, drive approaches along that stretch of road. The third project is on Village Drive, and the limits are from Tawny Ridge Lane to Puesta del Sol. As this council is very well aware, we just recently constructed 2 signals there in January of last year. We activated the signal at Village and Tawny Ridge. And just last month, we activated the signal at Village and Puesta del Sol. So this is a grant-funded project. Last year, we updated our capital plan to include this project. We've designed it. It's included in this capital improvement program. And the scope of the work, the bulk scope of the work is illustrated in that exhibit in front of you, which is the construction of new sidewalk, adjustment of drive approaches. We're constructing the ADA bypass to allow those patrons who are wheelchair bound to be able to safely use the sidewalk, and then tying into the on-site improvement. So I want to thank all the residents who've received our letters, who have turned them around, to have given us a right of entry. Thank you very much. And last but not least is a restripe of Green Tree Boulevard just east of Ridgecrest Road. We have fielded many complaints since the road opened in May of 23, about 2+ years ago. One of the biggest complaints that we received is that the merging pattern east of Ridgecrest Road forces you to merge immediately after the intersection, and that leads to congestion. We have ample pavement to be able to move that merging pattern further to the west. We're doing that as part of this project. We're also constructing a left turn pocket at Code Road so that those cars that are trying to make a left, they don't impact westbound traffic. And last but not least, also as you approach Ridgecrest Road eastbound, we are providing a right turn pocket just past the bridge to allow for anybody who's trying to make a right to do that, and that doesn't impede any eastbound traffic into the town of Apple Valley. So as Mr. Metzler indicated, these 4 projects were combined. We put together a very extensive bid package to be able to advertise the project. We've got 3 bids, formally actually last Tuesday, and the bids range from about 4.9 million to about 5.7. Our engineer's estimate was about 4.5. We're very familiar with both the second and the third bidder. C.A. Rasmussen completed Bear Valley Road last fall. Sully Miller has done multiple projects in the city. Vance Corporation has bid on our projects multiple times. Unfortunately, they have not won a bid, and the last time they did a project was about 7 years ago. So we do know who they are. They just haven't been successful in our last couple of bids. So I wanted to take a few minutes to discuss the fiscal impact. This is a multi-funded project. As you see, SB 1 and Measure I are the bulk of the payment funds that we have for our project, but we also include a $250,000 grant that we received for Village Drive Sidewalk Project. That was something that we received 2 summers ago in 23. And then if you see, there's a little bit of allocation from the water and the sewer, and that basically is the adjustment of the utility. So all of our water valves will get adjusted. The water fund will pay for that fair share of the improvements, and any sewer manholes will come out of Fund 425, which is your sewer fund. Continuing on with the fiscal impact, 3 out of the 4 projects came in on budget, with the 1 project not coming in on budget was Roy Rogers Drive. And honestly, to be honest with you, we did expect that. When we initially put the project in our capital plan, we expected to do a grind and overlay. That is how we put the project in our capital plan. That's how we ultimately planned on designing it. However, when we went out and we cored it, we determined that the existing structural section was deficient. And at that point, a reconstruction was required, and that is why essentially the project came in over budget, and we're requesting an additional appropriation of $728,000 of Measure I funds. This slide shows the fiscal impact with the additional appropriation included. So as you can see now, the available funding would be sufficient to cover the full contract value. So with that, our recommendation after the public hearing and the public has an opportunity to speak on it is that you approve the notice of exemption, adopt a resolution amending the Measure I funding for Roy Rogers Drive, and award a construction contract to Vance Corporation in the amount of approximately $4.95 million for this project. This concludes my presentation, and Mr. Metzler and I are happy to answer any questions that this council may have. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, you want to read the recommendation, please?
That the Honorable City Council open and conduct a public hearing and receive testimony regarding the proposed project, close the public hearing, approve the notice of exemption, and authorize staff to file the notice with the Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation and the County Clerk. Adopt Resolution Number 25-065 to amend the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget to reflect an additional appropriation of $728,000 from Fund 250 and additional expenses in the amount of $728,000 from Fund 250, and award a construction contract to Vance Corporation in the amount of $4,950,661.32 for the 2025 Citywide Street Improvement Project CC 26-031.
Okay, are there any technical questions from council members at this time? Let's go with Councilwoman Godin.
I have none, thank you.
Councilman Irving?
Councilwoman,
Councilwoman?
I'm teasing you. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you. It's a thorough presentation.
And Councilwoman Jones?
Thank you. It was a thorough presentation. Thank you so much. Because we're looking for that extra $728,000 for the reconstruction, generally, how long does a grind and cap last?
I would say somewhere between 10 and 15 years versus a reconstruction, you're looking at 20, 25 years.
So would you ideally, if you've done grind and caps before, want to be within that window to redo those areas?
That is correct. So again, when we initially planned for the project and when we put in our capital plan, we expected to do a grind and overlay. That's what our pavement management report told us. But when we went out and we cored it, we determined what you don't see when you do the pavement management. And I'll go into this in the presentation later on this evening. And that is essentially why we had a scope creep on that specific project.
Terrific. And then I just want to note that the two biggest contributors to this are SB1 and Measure I. Measure I being close to $2 million. That's pretty significant to our community. So thank you for highlighting that. Thank you, Mr. Bonilla. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
I have a couple questions, Freddie. The sidewalks, the corner ramps on Village that are on the Spring Valley Lake side, isn't that county?
So I think you mean Ridgecrest Road?
Or
So
Ridgecrest, I'm
just
sorry.
north of Bear Valley Road. It's actually city right away. You don't, the unincorporated portion of the county doesn't actually begin past the project limits on Paiute.
Okay. And then, did Vance do the interchange, the D Street freeway interchange?
That would have been before my time here at the
Okay.
city, so I'm not sure
Okay.
to be
I'm
honest.
trying to think, I've seen them do some work in the area. I guess that's it for me. Okay. I'll open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
No, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, I'll invite a motion for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I move.
Pardon me for one moment. Can you please close the public hearing?
I close the public hearing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Sorry.
Yes, I move that the City Council take action in accordance with the recommendations set forth on the agenda as to points 3 through 5, with points 1 and 2 already having been disposed.
Second.
Okay, we have a first by Councilwoman Jones and a second by Councilwoman Godin. Are there any comments to the pending motion?
I have none. Thank you.
No comment, done.
Okay, I think I'm supposed to say, are there any comments, Councilwoman Jones?
We're good. None.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councilwoman Godin,
No, thank you.
Councilwoman Irving?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay, help me.
Would you like me to take the vote?
Yes, take the vote.
Councilmember Godin,
Yes.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Motion passes with Mayor Pro Tem being Mayor Becerra being absent. So we have now taken action to approve staff's recommendation, points 3 through 5, as presented on the agenda.
Okay, can staff ask? Oh, she's here anyways. Okay. All right.
Public hearing item 2, award of construction contract notice of exemption for Venus Gas Improvement Project Phase 5. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. As you are aware, and as a part of the original property disposition of the former George Air Force Base, ultimately becoming the Southern California Logistics Airport, as a part of the property disposition, included in that was a natural gas system that was transferred separately to the city of Victorville. And since the closure of George Air Force Base, we've operated that natural gas system, effectively getting into the retail side of business where we have been providing natural gas services to customers out at SCLA. And we've been doing so principally through a connection or connections with Southwest Gas. And as you'll recall, recently we've endeavored and actually completed a transition to an alternate gas supply source, effectively coming through the Kern River natural gas pipeline, the same interstate pipeline that feeds the High Desert Power Plant. And so as we've completed that interconnect process, effectively connecting to much of our reconstructed distribution gas system out at SCLA. As it exists today, there remains one small segment of older natural gas pipeline that is actually still fed by Southwest Gas. And so what this item does before you is it is awarding a construction contract for the construction of approximately 1,000 feet of 2-inch natural gas pipeline to basically replace the service that exists that's connected to Southwest Gas and effectively connecting fully to our distribution system. It'll be wholly fed by the Kern River natural gas pipeline. And so with that, this is a joint effort by your city engineer, Mr. Freddie Bonilla, and Brenda Hampton, your Director of Electric Utility Services. Brenda's not here. We do have Kinda Saloom here who worked directly on this project. She's the staff analyst with the VMIS department. We're all available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council open and conduct the public hearing, receive testimony regarding the proposed capital improvement project, and seek a notice of exemption, close the public hearing, approve the CEQA notice of exemption, and authorize staff to file the notice with the Office of Planning and Research and the County Clerk, and award a construction contract to A.M. Ortega Construction, Inc. in the amount of $181,052.42 for the VMIS Gas Improvement Project Phase 5.
Thank you, ma'am. This time we'll do technical questions from council members. Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
I have none.
Councilwoman Jones.
I have none, thank you.
Councilwoman Godin.
I have none, thank you.
Councilwoman Irving.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
And I have none. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
If there are none, I'll now close the public hearing and I'll invite a motion for this item.
Move to adopt staff recommendation as to points 3 and 4 is presented in the agenda.
Second.
I have a first by Councilman Godin, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Harriman. Councilman Godin, any comments on the pending motion?
I just wanted to say, good job to staff. I did notice that Southwest Gas was going to raise our rates significantly, so it's good timing.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
I have none.
Councilwoman Jones.
Well, just that I love the proactive planning so that we're ahead on this. I mean, we have to really protect our city with all of the regulations that's coming down on us and rate increases every which way we turn. So thank you, Mr. Metzler, to you and your team.
Councilwoman Irving.
No comments. Thank you.
And I have done. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote, please?
Councilmember Godin.
Yes.
Councilmember Irving.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action to approve points 3 and 4 of staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. We'll move on to the consent calendar, items 3 through 15. I'll invite a motion.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council and the Council acting on its various boards of directors to take action in accordance with the recommendations set forth on the agenda, items 3 through 15.
Second.
I have a first by Councilmember Jones, a second by Councilmember Godin. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Godin.
Yes.
Councilmember Irving.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action on items 3 through 15 in accordance with recommendations as set forth on the agenda. We'll now move on to written communications, item 16. Amendment number 4 to the First Amendment, consolidated, restated, exclusive franchise agreement between the City of Victorville and Victorville Disposal for Solid Waste Refuge and Waste Diversion Recycling Services. That's a mouthful. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. As you're aware, Burtech operates in Victorville as Victorville Disposal, and has been operating in Victorville through a franchise agreement, which is providing it with the exclusive right to provide trash hauling and disposal services for customers here in Victorville. And this item before you is an amendment to that franchise agreement. It's amendment number 4, where this amendment is focused on altering provisions in that agreement, speaking to a requirement that currently exists to where Burtech has to fuel its trash hauling trucks with CNG from the city of Victorville's fueling dispensing stations, and working with Burtech closely. And the reason for the request for the alteration is because there was identified by Burtech a desire and a need to try to operate more efficiently, avoid downtime, especially during the daytime, of the lines that exist at our fueling station. And in fact, Burtech had actually pursued investing in the construction of a slow filling station at its existing yard. That system is now installed, and Burtech would effectively like to start taking advantage of that system so that they can slow fill their trash trucks at night as opposed to during daylight hours. And so with that, we were able to work out an arrangement where effectively Burtech is buying out that obligation, and Burtech will buy out on an annual basis that obligation so long as the city is continuing to provide CNG or compressed natural gas services. And so with that pretty involved effort, and certainly we have our author of this staff report is your Director of Public Works and Water, Mr. Doug Matthews. He's available via Zoom. Certainly Ms. Davidson, Deputy City Manager, is involved. And certainly we have Mr. Mike Aragon here from Burtech, who would be available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council adopt Resolution Number 25-062, amending the fiscal year 2025-2026 annual budget. Approve Amendment Number 4 to the first amended, consolidated, and restated exclusive franchise agreement between the City of Victorville and Victorville Disposal, Inc. for solid waste refuge and waste diversion recycling services. Authorize the city manager to make non-substantive changes and clarifications to the Amendment Number 4, and authorize the mayor to execute Amendment Number 4.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, we'll do technical questions from council members. Councilmember Godin,
I have none. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Jones,
I have none, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
I have none.
Councilwoman Irving,
I don't have any questions, thank you.
and I have none. I'll invite a motion for this item.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adopt staff's recommendation as set forth on the agenda.
Second.
I have a first by Councilmember Jones, a second by Councilmember Irving. We'll go with comment on the pending motion. Councilmember Jones?
Well, only that I think that this is a good get all the way around, and thank you for the great effort on this. I think it's going to work out well. Thank you.
Councilmember Irving, comments?
I agree with Member Jones. I think this is a win-win opportunity for all. Thank you.
Councilmember Godin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also agree with my fellow council members.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
I also agree with fellow council members. And
Oh, my goodness.
Michael is a great guy, so thank you, Michael, and that's all I have.
I won't say it. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Godin,
Yes.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item 17, presentation on the city's pavement management of city roads. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This presentation that we have before you is a presentation now that we've been doing for 3, maybe 4 years. And it's something that we annually do. In large part, we've done this just because roads, of course, is something that our residents are, as we know, very passionate about. It's a very complicated subject, especially when you look at the type of money that we receive as a city, but then also you look at the size of the city, the number of the roads, and you get to items like what you'll see tonight. The very simple question that gets asked regularly is, how do you choose that road over another road? My road's needing more repair than that road, and there's a lot that goes into that decision making. I used to call it the black box, where we put in a bunch of inputs of information, and that black box spits out recommendations in terms of roadways. And so several years ago, what we intended to do to help you, but also to help the residents see it all, is basically open that black box in a sense and show you all of the inputs that go into considering roadways, so that when we have recommendations before you, you can see that the recommendations before you have been fully vetted and have the best cost benefit available to you all and to the residents. So with that, the lead on the presentation is your city engineer, Mr. Freddie Bonilla, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Bonilla.
Thank you, Mr. Metzger. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. As Mr. Metzger indicated, this is the third year that we do this presentation. And the reason we target the second meeting in August is because our Measure I capital plan, which is the next item on the agenda, is typically due on September 1st to SBCTA. So at this point, we would have approved our budget. We know exactly what is in our capital plan, and that is ultimately why we select this date. You've seen this presentation twice before, so I'm going to go through it. Every year we tweak it. We add a little bit more information to give you a more polished result. So hang in there with me as I dive into all things pavement. So the first thing I wanted to highlight is our pavement management report. This is essentially our planning tool. This is what we use to determine where we spend our limited dollars, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the pavement management report is something that we do every 5 years. We break up the city, and I've got a great slide down in the presentation that you'll see shortly. But we look at everything. We analyze the existing conditions of our roadway. We measure the areas, the lengths, the widths. And then ultimately what you end up is we end up giving it an assessment, a pavement condition index, a PCI ranking. And very similar to, the letter grades that you've seen in high school and in college. Anything above 90 is doing really, really well. Anything below 40 is not so good. So this report is what we use as a planning tool to analyze the existing roadway network, to plan our capital improvement project, to make the important decisions that we do as to where we spend our dollars. So here is the slide I was talking about right there on the lower right-hand corner. You've got the 3 different zones. This pavement management report is done because Victorville is so big. We cover 74 square miles. I'll give you the total of the mileage in a future slide here. But if we try to do that annually, it would be a very, very tall task. So what we do is we divide the city in 3 different areas. Year 1, we do Zone A. Year 2, Zone B. Year 3, Zone Z. And then year 4 and year 5, we do some pavement analysis. Of course, we reach out to our consultant, specifically when it comes to projects that we complete or any streets that get accepted, any additional reporting that we might need. But we don't do a citywide survey assessment until we get back to year 5, and then we start the cycle all over again. So this is where we're at today. We have a total of 479 centerline miles. This is actually up. Last year when we reported this, we were at 451.6. I memorized that number because I always given a hard time by the public works guys. Say 452, Freddie. I'm like, well, it's not exactly 452. It's 451.6. And that is a direct result of roads that have been accepted on the tracks that have been completed by our developers. You've seen a lot of security releases come to you the last 18 months or so. And as these roads get accepted into the system, we include them in our next year's analysis. So there's the breakdown between arterial, collector, local, and alleyways. So to give you an example of what an arterial road is, that would be, the Mojave Drives, the Bear Valleys of the roads. Those are our super arterials. Amargosa, Topaz, The collectors are those smaller roads within our roadway system, not necessarily an arterial. That would be like the Lunas, the Dos Palmas of the world. Local roads, that's your resident at home, your cul-de-sac, where the vast majority of our residents is, all right? So as I alluded earlier, the whole point of the pavement management report is to determine a numerical value that gives us a planning tool to be able to compare projects and determine where we are at. So that is what we call the pavement condition index. It's a numerical number that we assign from 0 to 100. There are so our consultant actually goes out and does a field survey of every road segment within the city. Obviously, we split it up into 3 different zones, like I mentioned earlier. But every 5 years, every segment in the city gets analyzed. And the reason we do that is because that is how we are able to plan our future projects. So the things we're looking for are the type of cracking. You see some examples there. Longitudinal cracking is just along the length of the road. Transverse cracking is, orthogonal from edge of pavement or curb gutter to the other edge of pavement. Alligator is probably the worst that you see. That's when your asphalt actually starts to break up. And at that point, we're talking major dollars to do a reconstruction. So how do we calculate the PCI? Like I said, we break down the city into the 3 different areas. We physically go out and measure them, look at the existing condition, look at the areas. We look for distresses, the type of cracking, the number of potholes, and then ultimately a numerical value gets assigned. As you can see on the curve there on the lower left-hand side of the PowerPoint, you want to be 55 or above. That's fair to satisfactory. And you can see the different critical numbers on the right-hand side when it comes to when we actually need to do something. So for our arterial roads, that's when the PCI hits 55. Our minor arterials, 55 as well. Collectors 41, residential 41. Our PCC streets, that's Portland concrete cement. We don't have a lot of those, but the best example I can give you is Bear Valley Road. East of Mariposa, the number 1 and the number 2 lanes are concrete. It is a very great product, but a very expensive one, as our Mayor Pro Tem can attest to. It is significantly more costly, and that is why it's used very seldomly. The one thing that I did want to highlight in that curve is that, as you can see, maintaining our good roads is a great strategy. The longer we keep them good, the better it is for us, because the cost to rehabilitate an existing road is a lot less than having to reconstruct it once it totally fails. And we do our best to do that, and that curve kind of shows why it's worth doing it. So here is our current pavement conditions citywide. We've broken it down there. One of the things that we added this year to the PowerPoint is to give you an example of what that street looks like. So in this case, we selected Seneca Road that has a PCI of 65. Our average network is actually down for the year. We were at 68.6 last year. It's down to 65.7 this year. And I do want to remind this council that when I say average, I mean a weighted average. It doesn't mean that every street in the city is a 65. Certain roads like Bear Valley Road, which we reconstructed last year, 2-mile segment, 4 lanes total, 2 lanes in each direction, plus a median. That's going to weigh a lot more heavily than, say, the Knuckle intersection that I live on, because it's 1 lane in each direction, significantly smaller. So it is a weighted average. The other thing that we added this year is that trend that you see on the lower left-hand corner. That's the average trend. Every year we anticipate roadways dropping about 1 to 2 PCI, and that's really based on just wear and tear. Obviously in the high desert, we get very hot summers like we have right now, and then when we go to winter, we get very cold winters, and that contraction and expansion of the asphalt is what ultimately leads to cracking. We expect to see some of that every year. We analyzed it very hard as to why we saw that little increase from 2019 to 2020. And I think the best answer I could give you is SB1 funding was signed into law in 2017. We started accumulating those funds in 2018. And obviously, the more funding we have, the more projects we can do. That's the best educated guess I could give you. We looked at it very, very hard because it just kind of stuck out to us. but that's the best answer I could give you. Obviously, some of that institutional knowledge predates me as I arrived to the city in September of 2019, so I couldn't really give you a more detailed analysis, but my best educated guess is the fact that we had additional dollars. So this is the current condition of our arterial roads. Like I mentioned earlier, this is Amargosa, the Bear Valleys of the world, the Mojaves of the world. For the most part, as you can see, the vast majority of roads are in a good condition. Doing the math real quick here, it's about 65+% of the roads are in pretty good condition. We do have some roads that do need some repair, as you can see that in the yellow and the red there. So these are the collector roads, our PCI rating, and our percentage of where we are at. Again, I am proud to report that for the most part, our roads are in pretty good shape, but we do need some work in some of our collector roads. And it's unfortunate for our collector roads because though they do get traveled more than the local roads, they don't necessarily get the traffic that our major arterials and our super arterials get, and consequently, you see some of that in the data before you. Last but not least, these are your local roads, the residential streets. Like I mentioned earlier, that's the knuckle right where I live. Again, most of those are in pretty good shape, but again, you have a significant portion that also needs some repair. So this slide here is to show you what goes into how we determine what is a road that we reconstruct, what is a road that we do some pavement rehabilitation. And the best example I could give you, and I actually had a pretty good discussion with our Director of Public Works, Mr. Doug Matthews, on this. The best example I could give you as to try to compare what a preservation project, like a slurry seal or a microsurfacing is, versus a rehabilitation project, grind and overlay, or a reconstruction project would be if you were to take the asphalt and equate that to a brand new partition wall. So your reconstruction means new framing, new drywall, new paint, new finish. Everything's brand new. Your rehabilitation projects at the grind and cap that was previously approved for Ridgecrest Road this evening, that's going in there, leaving the existing framing in place, replacing the drywall, and repainting it. So you get a great finish, but the structural section pretty much remains the same. Your slurry seal, that would be the equivalent of essentially going out and patching some holes and painting. Yes, you do extend the life of the pavement, but it is not as great as doing a rehabilitation or a reconstruction. So when we actually go into the planning stage, we look at what the current PCI ranking is, and then we do a benefit to cost ratio. And that's exactly what this slide entails. So your available funding gets split up amongst the different road segments. And like I said, we added significant number of roads this past year. Our funding, unfortunately, it's not a one-for-one increase. So the more roads we add, it's not as if we get additional dollars. Our dollars are somewhat fixed. And that's the biggest struggle that we struggle with, where the cost of living on projects or the price increase year over year doesn't keep up with the revenues. When we do projects, we see 10 to 15 to 20% increases on cost. When we look at our projections, sometimes we see 1 to 2, 3% projection. So that is one of the biggest struggles. So what we do is we analyze every segment, and it's a very long, complicated spreadsheet. But as Mr. Metzler indicated, it is strictly based, it's a numerical analysis based on benefit and cost. And the formula is simple. And the example I can give you there is Mojave Drive. We take the average daily traffic. That is why the bulk of the funding ultimately ends up with the Bear Valleys and the Mojaves of the world, because that's where the bulk of the traffic is. We multiply that by the increase in PCI. So if we take a street from, say, 25 to 100, that would be a 75 increase, divide that by 2. We multiply that times the time, what we expect to be the service life out of that new road, the length of the project, and then we divide it by the cost. As you can see, Mojave calced out really, really well because it's at 13.6. It's probably one of the higher ratios that we've seen in the past years. The only one that comes to mind that is anywhere near that is Air Expressway, because again, large traffic. By the way, I want to give credit to Mr. Gengler. This is his formula, and we've had it, and we'll continue to use it. My perspective is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So this is, and you'll see this in the next item as far as what is in our capital plan. You see the BC ratios there. Just to give you an example, if I were to do an analysis for a local road, and we did, it doesn't cost much to do a grinding overlay on my little street segment, but it only benefits me and my 20 neighbors. And so when you put it into that formula, essentially the BC ratio is 0.01. It's almost zero, which is an unfortunate thing. But when you have limited dollars, you have to put them where the maximum benefit is, and that's typically your super arterials, your major arterials. You know, like I said earlier, the Mojaves and Bear Valleys of the world. There is something that sticks out there, and you'll see 3rd Avenue between Nisqually Road and Field Street. The BC ratio is only 1.5. This is where engineering judgment also plays into role, and the reason this project was added was twofold. One, my department works very well with Public Works. You know, the way I say it is, we build it, they maintain it. So we have a great working relationship. Whenever they field multiple multiple requests from our residents about potholes and it's repetitive, we take that serious and we put that into review. So when you look at 3rd Avenue, the development community has done multiple projects along that corridor between Bear Valley and Nisqually. You obviously had that extension that got done last fall with the new signal at Bear Valley and 3rd. That has led to an increase in traffic on Bear Valley Road. And so when that section of road is being reconstructed, a portion of it is being slurry sealed in the contract that this council just awarded last month. KB Homes recently completed some tracks. They capped and slurry sealed a portion of 3rd Avenue. There's a missing segment there. And that's where what I was alluding to about as engineering judgment comes into play. If we wait for that BC ratio to increase, by the time we get to that segment of 3rd Avenue, everything else that's good right now would have fallen apart. So we added that into their capital plan, even though the BC ratio is not as high, but we also had to take into account the ongoing maintenance that our Public Works Department has to do, as well as look at the big picture perspective when you have additional traffic because of that road extension that was completed last fall. The other thing I wanted to highlight on the Measure Plan, on the Measure I capital plan, is the big mandate for this year is Mojave Drive this fiscal year. We've included all of our SB1 funding for Mojave Drive, and the vast majority of the funding is for Mojave Drive as well. We have a project that is finalizing design right now between on Mojave between Amargosa and Village Drive. We will probably wait to advertise that later this fall so that we have ample weather. That project I would have loved to have been in this position to award it tonight like I did with Ridgecrest Road and Roy Rogers, but it's just, there was a lot of scope and a lot of scope creep, and I can give you a dissertation on that. But the big project for this upcoming fiscal year is Mojave Drive, and then if you look to fiscal year 27, it's Air Expressway. So one of the things that we do annually is look at our existing revenues and what we can do or how we can best spend them. So I wanted to take a minute to talk about the 3 different sources of funding. I included Fund 220, that's your gas tax, highway users tax. That funds our Public Works Department activities. That's the asphalt crew, the concrete crew that you see out there constantly filling potholes, seal cracking on roads. Even though we don't use that for capital projects, it's basically operations and maintenance. It is a big part of how we maintain our roadway system. I have a lot of discussions with a lot of residents, and the biggest complaint I get is the city of Victorville just doesn't maintain its roads. And I always tell them, why don't you tune in August and I'll just prove to you with facts and data that that is just factually inaccurate. And you'll see that in a further slide. So that's Fund 220, that's our highway users tax. The other portion is SB1, I mentioned it earlier, it passed in 2017. That sales tax, gas sales tax increase and the vehicle license fee increase that went into effect 8 years ago, specifically is for capital projects. So 100% of that money goes directly into capital projects. And then Measure I is that half-cent sales tax, countywide, Measure I for infrastructure, right? That is distributed amongst all the different cities. Half of that, approximately half of that goes into operations and maintenance. That's what funds our striping and signage crews in our Public Works Department, as well as 25% of our traffic signal maintenance crews. So half of that is evenly split between projects and maintenance. And when you add it all up, of the approximately $14 million, only about 6.5 goes towards projects. To give you an example, Bear Valley Road last fall was essentially an $8 million project. So when you do a big project like that, it basically wipes out your entire allocation. Some of the other data included in here was the unlimited budget. Every year we do an analysis. So the item before you is or that number before you, 164.6 million. That's what we calculated last year. We did a deeper dive this year. We actually went in. We went line item by line item. We found some discrepancies in our pavement management report. Some collectors were listed as local roads. We cleaned that up, and then we've modified that. But as you can see, just allocating our current resources is just insufficient. We cannot keep up with pavement degradation because of the temperature that we see in the high desert with our existing funding. So having done that analysis, we look at what is our need as far as this year. It's a lot, $164.6 million. That's the updated number. Now, I wish I was in a position to say even if we were and we were able to execute that between now and let's say next December, our average PCI goes up to 80, which is a significant increase, but it just goes to show you what our needs are. One of the comments I always hear is, what about my local road? You know, it just got accepted by the city, the developer just reconstructed. Why don't you go out and slurry seal it today? Well, if we were to do that, just on the local road preservation projects, that's almost $30 million. And when $6 million is being allocated for projects annually, I would have to wait 5 years to be able to do that, while I'm also letting the other roads further deteriorate. So we do try to do a balanced approach. We do a lot of reconstruction and overlay projects on the arterial and collector system, and then we go through and do a geographic area. The best example, obviously, is the Golden Triangle, which was completed last fall. About $1.6 million went into slurry sealing and microsurfacing those road segments. Again, I wanted to highlight the trend of the average PCI. As you can see, every year it does go down just based on use, the temperature fluctuations that we encounter here in the high desert. So I wanted to give some love to our Public Works Department. I talked a lot about projects, and projects is a little bit of what we do, but it's not everything that we do when it comes to our roadway maintenance. And so this is an added item from last year to give you a 5-year rolling data on the number of potholes that we fill, asphalt that we remove and replace, sidewalk that we construct, curb and gutter. So the data is there. Like I said, the proof is in the pudding. For anybody that says that the city of Victorville does not maintain our roads, just look at the data. It's right in front of you. That's on the asphalt and concrete side of the house. When you look at our traffic and striping, specifically when you look at our striping, the number of miles that we striped in the last 5 years, that's 2,200 miles. That basically tells you that we are basically restriping every road segment citywide every year. So our maintenance efforts, I would put them on par with anybody.
Yeah.
So, and then this is something that we included last year as well, is to give you that rolling data as to what has been invested the last 5 years. I took the liberty of adding our ongoing projects this year. We last month, the council awarded a $1.1 million contract for slurry seal, our citywide pavement preservation project, phase 2 that we called it. And of course, earlier this evening, this council awarded a $4.9 million contract. So when you add it all up, by the end of this December, we will have invested close to $92 million the last 5 years. The big caveat there is, of course, is the Green Tree Extension project and the bridge project on Bear Valley Road included costs for the bridge reconstruction or bridge construction on Green Tree and bridge widening on Bear Valley Road. But I would argue that, you know, you can't really use that road if you can't get across the tracks or across the wash. So That is a vital part of our roadway system. So what's our future outlook? As I mentioned earlier, the bulk of our funding comes from Measure I. It's a half-a-cent sales tax that's countywide, and SB1, which comes from the state. As this council is aware, SBCTA was here a couple of months ago giving an update as to the proposed extension. We are very much in support of that. Without Measure I, I wouldn't be able to do my job. But the revenue is down. When you look at the data year over year, it's down $1 million from fiscal year 25 to where our projection is this year. We have built a pretty good, healthy fund balance, which allowed us to be able to do that additional appropriation earlier this year. But we need to be careful in how we move forward with that fund balance, because inevitably we plan for a project, we think we might need to do something, we go out, we core, we design, and we determine, oh, we need to account for this. And so it's always good to have some reserve. So I would caution with just spending that fund balance available. SB1 revenues are steady. We are seeing them constantly go up every year, and that is helping us. One of the comments that I heard from some of my staff is, what about the community facilities district? Isn't that going to help? Yes, it will help, but it will help with future development. It does not help me with our current streets that we've already accepted. And I want to leave you this, and I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Metzler. We really should consider our own sales tax measure for infrastructure projects. SB1 is something that we receive from the state. Nothing stopped the legislature from saying tomorrow we're going to take all of that money and put it into the freeway system. We would be powerless to stop that. If Measure I is not extended in 2040, and it's a county-wide measure, Victorville is beholden to the results of a ballot measure that is countywide. We need to control our own destiny. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Metzler for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonilla. And if I might, just to kind of connect some dots, because I know there was a lot of information there, and I'm sure you've got a lot of questions, but I think I'd like to focus on a couple of points. And it's my page 417, and if you'll indulge me just for a second, and if Freddie, I don't know if you can control it and take us to that pavement condition index slide. But if how many do you guys have it? Okay.
As soon as our IT staff.
Okay.
The PowerPoint back
Can
up,
the
I'll get that
council
slide.
members at least scroll to 417? Okay, so if you can scroll to 417, which is entitled PMR Pavement Condition Index, in case you can catch up, Freddie. Later in the presentation, Mr. Bonilla gave you a rating, and that rating that he gave you citywide is 65.7. And so I want to connect the dots with that 65.7 to where it is on the scale. And that scale is telling you that that's good. But is that good enough, especially considering obviously all of the complaint that we hear, certainly the issues that we see. And so later in the presentation, Mr. Bonilla shows some measures to where we could get, and I think very good is probably a target we should desire or consider trying to achieve. That's anywhere from 71 to 85. So right now we're good. In my view, we should try or aspire to be very good. If you'll go to the next slide, 418, and I want to share my thoughts on that graphic at the bottom left, where you kind of see the PCI scale, good, satisfactory. It kind of stays constant until you start getting into fair, and then you see an accelerated decline in the overall condition, and you kind of see an accelerated decline once you get into probably let's call it 65. And when you start seeing that accelerated decline, you actually see an accelerated cost going along with that. When I see this graphic, and considering an action item we took earlier in this meeting, I would say a classic project that is described in this slide is the Roy Rogers reconstruction project that we're undertaking right now. And I say that because in that staff report you read that the age of that road is about 34 years old. And there's really only been one substantive improvement back in 2008 that was really private development led, where there was effectively widening and the installation of curb and gutter. But nothing really allowed us to keep up with the need to maintain that, you know, along the years, in large part because of what you're seeing later in the slides relative to the funding constraints. If you go to page 419, we touched on it. The bottom left graphic is a PCI trend that we're clearly seeing that going back to 2013, we're in decline, notwithstanding all of the good work that we're doing in terms of trying to attend to the highest priority, highest projects with benefit cost ratios. We are in decline, and at the current funding levels, we're going to continue to be in decline unless we can somehow curb that trajectory. And if you'll go to page 427, my views here, just to kind of close on the connecting of the dots. Bullet number 2 is where we're at today. The 6.5 to 7.5 is roughly what we have currently to take on your major CIP. And so with that funding level, and it doesn't grow at a high rate over years. And so it's pretty constant. And so I think the point is, if we can expect that revenue going forward, it's easy to say that we're going to continue seeing a PCI decline. You know, there's been the estimate here, and you've gotten bullet point 4 and bullet point 5, what it would take, or where your revenue or your road money needs to be if you wanted to be in that very good. And if we wanted to be, say, very good at 71 or 72, I'm sorry, somehow that revenue needs to increase to $14 million a year, and then 19 if you wanted to be in that even higher scale of very good. So I wanted to connect those dots because, you know, roads, of course, is something that's near and dear to everybody's heart. It's one of the things that we most easily complain about. Your city and your staff, given the resources, is doing everything it possibly can to not only maintain, but also invest in and construct the roadways that are certainly getting the highest of traffic, but we have an aggregate roadway system that's still very much in need of attention. And the less attention we give them, just like we have the Roy Rogers experience, the less attention you give that over the years, you're going to find yourself in more and more streets that are going to have accelerated deterioration to the point where the cost, just as we were dealing with additional appropriation earlier, you're going to see more and more and more of that. And the more and more cost escalation you're going to see because the roadway is in a higher deteriorated state, that's going to even lead to less money for other roads to be done. So I think the point in all that is there's potentially a major snowballing effect. I think we are in a good place today to be able to identify the issues, and certainly it's something that we collectively are going to have to work on to try to course correct. With that, Madam Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. All right, council members, get your questions ready. We'll now go to technical questions from Councilmember Godin.
Would you like me to read the recommendation, Madam Mayor?
Sure, that would work too.
Staff recommends that the Honorable City Council receive and file this report.
Now it's my turn, huh? Thank you, ma'am. Sorry. Technical questions from council members. Councilmember Godin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do. Mr. Metzler, you talked about the $14 million a year that we would need. Would that stabilize the PCI trend, or would that increase the PCI trend?
That is a good question. I'm going to let the engineer answer that one, if I might.
I think it would, you would see an uptick in that trend.
Okay. And we talked about the SBCTA considering doubling Measure I. If they were to get that, does that change the need for our own ballot measure, or would we still want to pursue both?
In my opinion, we would want to pursue both because our pass-through is about $6 million. If you double that, it becomes 12. and that still is insufficient in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Irving?
Well, that's a lot of information to take in, but I think my takeaway from this is we need to increase our funding. And so with that being said, I think the council has to reflect and do some deep thinking because you're right. That's what people talk about. So let me ask you a question, Mr. Metzler. If we were to entertain a measure as a city, what's the time frame on that? What would we be looking at next year or?
That's ultimately a decision of the council because there are options. There's different types of measures that council can pursue, either a special tax or a general tax. Special tax can basically come forward in the form of a ballot measure at an election decided upon by the council. General taxes, such as the Measure P that we did, have to be considered at general elections. And so there's differences in the voter threshold to be able to see them pass. In the case of a general, it'd be 50% plus one vote gets you passage, whereas special tax requires 2/3 votes. And so if the council were to consider something similar to what we did with Measure P, again, it would have to be general purpose, so we couldn't say that it was for just roads, because if you put a measure on that's specific to just roads, it won't qualify as a general, it'd have to be a special. But if you could qualify a measure, say, for infrastructure, because there's a lot of other infrastructural needs, qualify it as a general measure, 2026 in November would be the soonest time you could do that.
Okay, thank you. For me, I don't really have any questions. I think I need to, as a council member, reflect because the need is great. Thank you.
Councilmember Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you, I know I ask this every year, but I think it's helpful to our community. Can you briefly define, Mr. Metzler, Mr. Bonilla, PCI?
So it's the numerical value that we give to a road. So like I mentioned earlier, if you were to equate that to, like a test in high school, 90 to 100 is good, 80, basically anything over 70 is good. The higher you are to 100, the closer you are to essentially a brand new road. So if we were to do a pavement analysis on Bear Valley Road, I would imagine that the PCI would be somewhere like 97, 98, because you are going to see a little bit of degradation, since that road is our most heavily trafficked road in the city, approximately over 55,000 vehicles at its highest peak. So you are going to see a very high PCI ranking there. If you're anything below 41, then now you're starting to see all that alligator cracking, all the block cracking, the cracks that are significant. You can see the pavement distresses.
Thank you. And Mr. Metzler, I'm going to use a silly analogy, but I remember some council meeting some time back when we were talking about landscaping, and I remember someone saying that regardless of how much you feed, water, nurture, and care for plants, they're only meant to hang on so long, right? Is that true for roads? No matter how much we care for them, at some point, they have to be reconstructed no matter how much we care for the product?
I guess it really depends on the level of maintenance. And, if the level of maintenance is proper to where you're staying on top of things, if you start out with a good design, good structural support, I think you can expect that road to continue to last for a very, very long time. I know that's not definite, but I'm going to let Freddie maybe add to that.
That's a great start, Mr. Metzler. So what I would say is a lot of the roads, they don't necessarily meet our current city standards. So it's not as if they were constructed today. A brand new track that's in development today is going to meet our current city standards. You're going to get 3 inches of asphalt on 8 inches of base. You're going to have some structural section there. But there are some tracks that were developed in the 60s and 70s where, You don't have that. You don't have that structural section. You have 2 inches of asphalt on native, and something like that, you're going to see the reflective cracking and the potholes significantly faster. The best example I can give you, and I keep going to Bear Valley Road, when we reconstructed that, we basically redid a whole new structural section. That section right now is 18 inches deep, 1.5 feet between the base and the asphalt. That is going to last us 30 years. And because we did a significant investment, we're going to be able to upkeep that maintenance, do the slurry at the 10-year mark, do the grind and overlay at the 20-year mark. So you don't have to do that reconstruction, theoretically, like Mr. Metzler indicated. The issue that we have seen, and Roy Rogers is the perfect example, is you go out there and you core it, and you don't have the structural section that meets the current needs for that specific traffic index. And so at that point, you are left with no choice but to reconstruct it and to basically start from the bottom up. The roads that we have reconstructed in the past, Industrial, Silica, Green Tree with brand new construction, Bear Valley Road, Village Drive, we expect them that they're going to last us longer because we're keeping an eye on them. We're making sure that the PCI is holding. At what point do we pull the trigger on the slurry seal project? At what point do we do the grind and overlay project? We are keep monitoring those, and we're able to do that effectively. The issue is our older roads that were not built to our current standards.
Okay. On let's just say 19 million annually would increase our overall PCI to 80.2 over 10 years. So when I think about bringing in that kind of income, I know that today's dollars are not the same as tomorrow's dollars, right? So we're just looking at what that would look like now, correct?
Present value.
And then the PCI of 65, that is citywide, correct? So we certainly have neighborhoods that are far more deteriorated than that. And that's why I think, the outcry from so many of our residents, because, they're feeling the pain perhaps more than some of the others, right? So this $19 million plus would get us to where we're maybe tending to more of those local roads and those collector roads, right? So that the people that are really affected can feel some improvement. Is that fair?
Very fair.
I would say it's fair, and I'll qualify that because there's two measures that we need to not lose sight of. Of course, if you're using the $19 million annually, that's something that over time, especially as we invest that annually for subsequent years, then eventually you're going to see it changing the trajectory of that PCI curve, because at that pace, if you're just taking it on an annual approach, you're eating away at that $164 million present value need. I mean, currently, based upon this analysis, you have $165 million worth of improvements that if you wanted to achieve that higher rating today, you'd have to spend that amount today. And so even if we were to get the revenues up, you still have that present value of 165 that you got to chase over years, unless you leverage that to pursue some kind of bond or something like that.
And I have two more questions. Well, let me just ask one. In looking at the proposed ballot measure at some point for Measure I, SBCTA is still contemplating whether it's going to be 0.5% or 1%. There's fair arguments on both sides of that issue, certainly.
Your time is up.
Can I finish my question, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. What impact, if any, would going from 0.5% to 1% have on us in terms of our own ballot measure, the maximum that we could pursue on that, or vice versa?
So if they raise it to the 1%, certainly what we can expect is benefit in terms of basically a doubling. I think that's the easiest math in terms of what gets passed through for road improvement money. However, the one thing that's worth knowing that, if the SBCTA does increase the Measure I tax from 0.5 cent to 1 cent sales tax, it does eat into some capacity that's available to cities in being able to put measures, TUT type measures, on the ballot. And so, for example, before we actually were successful last year in getting special legislation approved, this state law basically allows above the Bradley Burns tax of 7.25%, a maximum cap that local agencies can effectively put measures on and increase the collective sales tax. So that would be 9.25 as the max. Now, we got special legislation approved last year that allows us up until 2029 to have a cap of 10.25%. Don't think we need it all, but if you have other agencies such as SBCTA and others, you see it in LA County where there's a lot of taxing entities putting measures on the ballot, basically eating into a capacity that is otherwise, in my view, available to cities. And so there is a theory, and it's talked about in LA County, that if the cities don't go out and get their share, they're going to lose it to somebody else.
Precisely.
I don't see that level of competition existing today, but we're all dealing with similarly natured issues. And so that is something worth being mindful of, especially at SBCTA. Yeah, there's going to be a benefit in the pass-through. Yeah, it might even make things kind of complicated if you're putting a measure on the same ballot in the same election year. But also at the same time, if you don't, or even if you do, it does, if they're successful, it will eat into the capacity that could otherwise be gotten by the city if it were to try to issue measures even further into the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
Yes, okay, so Freddie, I consider myself and the mayor pretty knowledgeable to a little bit more than some cities. Anyways, the expansion and contraction is so great up here. It just destroys things, and I've witnessed it. I've done jobs that have had to be done because of it. So this question for Mr. Metzger, if we were to get the 14, if we were to achieve the amount of 14, I think the way I understood it is at first the residents aren't going to see that on their small roads until farther, maybe another year or two, correct? Because the reason I ask that is because you know how people are, that if we can get something like that passed, as soon as it gets passed, they're going to say, well, I want my street done right now. And so we have our connectors and our arterials that need to be addressed first.
I think there's definitely going to have to be a balancing act. I think it's a very good question, and I think it's certainly something that's going to require some thought and some balancing in terms of how do you prioritize, and how we've been used to prioritizing using the methodology that Freddie shared with you. Yeah, you're going to see the black box spitting out major thoroughfares, major roadways, because that's where you're going to get your highest benefit cost ratio. If you go to page 426, that's going to give you a clear example of where your PCI ratings are very low or very volatile in terms of the range in which they're rated. And so with that being said, if we had that ability to take on more projects, I think we'd have to be thoughtful and maybe even alter the methodology to some degree to include perhaps larger focus on citywide slurry projects, presuming slurry is the answer in some of the neighborhood streets. But I think we would have to come up with some kind of balancing act to the methodology to do more on the neighborhood streets.
Yeah, and excuse me, and I think that is just the way it'll have to happen, because like I said, the people want to see something on their street now. I've been in my house for 36 years. In that 36 years, it's gone through a slurry twice, but my streets were 2 inches of asphalt on native,
And every 30 feet, there's a 6-inch gap that just grows and grows. We're not going to pulverize and reconstruct the residential streets. That's just not.
Your time is up.
I think Ms. Becerra will finish on what I'm saying.
Freddie, all my statements have nothing to do with engineering or the Public Works Department or Mr. Metzler and his staff. Valley Center Drive, is it considered arterial or collector street?
Valley Center Drive,
Costco,
I believe it's a local road. I don't think
it's a local road.
I don't think
So
it's a-
everybody at one time or another in this city goes on that road and visits Costco. That's 500,000 people at one time or another is on that road, but yet that road ranks because of what street it is, it's low. So at $1.5 million to take care of 1.6 million square feet of roadway just in a slurry, we're gonna get behind. To keep our streets up, for say Mojave Drive, we're gonna do it this year. In 7 years, Mojave Drive should be getting a slurry because of something that's out of our control, for temperatures going from 110 degrees to 16 degrees.
I stand corrected. I just pulled up our circulation. I mean, it's actually listed as an arterial. I
It's an arterial, okay. So it's still a heavily traveled street.
Yes.
But it's not even on our 5-year plan due to the fact everything we have in our 5-year plan. What we have out of our control and what people want to get us, recall, because we're not doing nothing about it. The temperatures vary so much in this desert and even like in Phoenix. You can only put so much oils, rock, and pulverize back into the roadways. Slurry, like I said, Mojave Drive is going to get done this year. In 7 years, we should be slurrying Mojave if we want to save it. We can't. We can't because 5 years from now, we're going to be trying to do Asperia Road. We have to take care of these roads of something that is out of our control. You said 27 miles of roadway was given to us between last year and this year. So in 7 years, those roadways are going to need a slurry. Not going to happen because we understand that 7 years from now, Mojave Drive needs it. It goes from a 70 to a 25 in 3 years, out of our control. But it'll be a 25 once 10 years.
Your time is up.
Thank you. I'm just going to finish this statement. We need to take care of our roads, and with the money we have in our bank accounts, it's not going to happen. It's going to be upside down in 7 to 10 years for what we're doing. And like I said, nothing against you or staff. But thank you, Mr. Metzler, and that's something this council is going to have to think about to do. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the presentation.
Pleasure.
It says here, invite a motion, but it's just,
It's just a receive and file, so you can move forward.
thank you. We'll go to item 18. Here we go again, more fun. Measure I, 5-year capital improvement plan. Mr. Metzler, you ready for this one now?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. So a lot of this you've seen, so it should make this item fairly easy. But this item is before you. This is basically a 5-year capital improvement plan. It's a procedural requirement by SBCTA as a part of the Measure I, a 5-year planning process for them. And so every year around this time, we're required to put this together. There's a due date sometime in September that we have to have this submitted. And so with that, it's basically taking a lot of what you've seen, but to re-describe it, we have included on page 438 what that actual capital improvement plan looks like, along with the cash flowing or the planned cash flowing of those projects. And so with that, the item has been authorized by your city engineer, Mr. Freddie Bonilla. He's certainly glad to come up and do another presentation if you like, but we may have covered it.
Thank you. Is that it, sir? Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council adopt resolution number 25-053, approving the Measure I 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2025-2026 through 2029-2030.
Take the whole questions from council members. Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
I have none.
Councilwoman Irving.
I don't have any either.
Councilwoman Godin.
I have none, thank you.
Councilwoman Jones.
I have one. So looking at page 438, God bless anyone that can read that because I certainly can't. Is on here anywhere Cantina and where are we on that? Cantina is a road that's used a lot to get to and from Bear Valley Road from other areas. It's not? Okay. Oh, she increased her screen. Yay.
I don't see anything on here. Freddie, are you familiar at all with Cantina and where?
I live in that neighborhood, so I am very familiar with Cantina Road. I drive it at least once a week. It is not on our capital plan, mostly because the benefit to cost ratio isn't there.
Okay, thank you. So I know it's been about 11 years since that was last looked at. So, okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I'm next. Mr. Bonilla, Mr. Metzler, have we ever thought about buying a slurry truck? The crew just cringed when I said that.
I don't know. I'll have to check.
All right. $1 a square foot, 35 cents a square foot. Like I said, the crew is now cringing. Thank you, sir. I'll invite a motion for this item. Motion to adopt staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda.
Second.
I have no comments on the pending motion. Job well done. Councilwoman Irving,
Comments, thank you.
Councilwoman Godin,
None, thank you.
Councilwoman Jones,
I have none.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
My comment is a slurry truck sounds like a pretty good idea.
There we go. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote, please?
Councilmember Godin,
Yes.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item 19, developmental impact fee credit agreement for the regional drainage fees by and between Victorville 142 LP and the city of Victorville. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. City council policy provides a mechanism that we refer to as a free fee credit agreement, which effectively allows for developers that are installing public improvements that are greater than what the respective project requires, perhaps because the public improvement is more regional in nature. Development can be eligible for a credit of fees paid associated with the installation of that regional public improvement. And so in this particular case, we have an item involving track map 16894, which is the proponent of the project is Lennar Homes. It's a 142 single family lot subdivision located at the southwest corner of Topaz and Mojave. And at that particular location along the north boundary of the site and in the south boundary of Mojave Drive, in the public right-of-way, there is a requirement to build a regional drainage pipe, a 60-inch pipe, along the frontage of the road, and eventually have it connected to an existing tributary that then discharges stormwater to the north and to the east. And so with that, as a part of the condition for the project, that condition exists. The developer has, because the storm drain pipe is regional in nature and more than what's necessary to handle the actual subdivision's the stormwater runoff, they have applied for and are seeking a fee credit agreement with us where effectively they'll receive a credit for the development impact fees paid. And so with that, this item has been brought forward by your city engineer, Mr. Freddie Bonilla, and he's available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council approve the attached Development Impact Fee Credit Agreement for regional drainage fees between Victorville 142 LP and the City of Victorville, and authorize the city manager and city attorney to make non-substantive changes and clarifications, if needed, to the Development Impact Fee Credit Agreement.
Thank you, ma'am. Technical questions from council members. Councilmember Jones?
I have none. Thank you.
Councilmember Godin?
I have none, thank you.
Councilmember Irving?
Questions, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
I had all mine answered earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, and I have done. I'll invite a motion for this item.
Thank you. Move to adopt staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda.
Second.
I have a first by Councilmember Jones, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Harriman. Comments on the pending motion, Councilmember Jones?
None, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
I would just real quick want to say, thanks for all that info, Keith. I didn't know that, you know, that kind of thing. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, that doesn't have the developers say, stay out of Victorville, so.
Councilmember Godin?
None, thank you.
Councilmember Irving?
No comments.
And I have none. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote, please?
Councilmember Godin,
Yes.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item 20, approval of the North American Emergency Standard Board-based contract with special provision, NASB, for sale and purchase of natural gas with EDF Trading North America LLC. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As you're aware, recently we completed the interconnection to the Kern River natural gas pipeline, which allows us to access larger volumes of natural gas from effectively the wellhead of where the actual natural gas is procured. And with that, it's fairly common practice to use what's called NASB or NASB contract. It's a standard supplier contract where we rely on suppliers effectively to bundle and then basically sell us a piece of a block of the natural gas commodity that they secure from the wellhead. And so with that, we currently transact with a supplier already. The supply contract that we have in place expires October 31st. And as shared with you previously, because we do have two other standard supplier contracts in place, this would effectively provide us access with a third standard supplier contract. And in the case of the expiration coming up in October 31st, we'll effectively be reaching out to all three suppliers to compete the price and try to get the best price for the forthcoming year. And so with the approval of this standard contract, it readies us to be able to transact with, in this case, EDF Trading, presuming, of course, that they're the lowest of the bidder when we actually put the bid out to market for natural gas. And so with that, the author on this item is your Director of Electric Utility Services, Ms. Brenda Hampton. She's not here today, but Ms. Kinda Saloom is here today. And we're both available to answer any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
The Honorable City Council approve the North American Emergency Standards Board-based contract, special provisions to the base contract credit support addendum, and special provisions to the credit support addendum, collectively the NASB, with EDF Trading North America LLC, EDF for natural gas supply and related services, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement, and allow the city manager and/or his/her designee to execute transaction confirmations under the NASB contract for procurement of firm gas supply not to exceed the city manager's purchasing authority pursuant to ordinance number 2381.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, we're going to do technical questions from council members. Councilmember Godin?
I have none, thank you.
Councilmember Jones?
None, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
I have none.
And I have none. I'll invite a motion for this item.
Move to adopt staff recommendation as to points 1 and 2 as presented on the agenda.
Second.
I have a first by Councilmember Godin, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Harriman. Council comments on the pending motion, Councilmember Godin?
None, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
None.
Councilmember Jones?
None, thank you.
And I have none. Madam Clerk, do I have to recognize that one stepped away or no?
I'll note in the minutes that Councilmember Irving left the dais at 8:06.
Thank you, ma'am. Can you please take the vote?
Sorry, 8:05. It's Councilmember Godin,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
and Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes with Councilmember Irving being absent.
We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item 21, substandard lease agreement for buildings 676, 677, 678 by and between Southern California Logistics Airport Authority and the Boeing Company. Mr. Metzler, would you please kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This item involves a couple of our wide-body hangars out at SCLA. Hangars are buildings 676 and 678. Those are our two wide-body hangars. This is a sublease. It also includes ancillary facilities as a part of the overall leasehold. And so with that, we've been working with Boeing, and as you're very familiar with Boeing, they've had an increasing presence over the last 20 years at SCLA, originally starting with their leasing operation and ultimately growing to what we see out there today, which is everything including maintenance, repair, and overhaul of aircraft and flight testing, as we're currently flight testing right now, the new variant of the 777. And so with that, Boeing is committed to continuing its presence here at SCLA, and with the lease, the current lease agreements that we have in place expiring at the end of this month, staff has been working closely with them, starting discussions almost a year ago, but really ramping up negotiations in the last 30 to 45 days to where we're bringing an item before you tonight that's reflective of all of that work, where we've got a sublease agreement that commits Boeing to occupy the hangars, paying the market rent for an initial term of 10 years with 2 5-year options. So there's definitely an expectation with this lease to see Boeing continue its operations well into the future. The lease does contain provisions for annual cost inflators of 3%, and it also does include a rent credit component over a 3-year period, up to a total of $3 million based upon actual costs of a number of upgrades that are required, largely in hangar 676, which is your 1950s vintage wide body hangar. And so with that, that's the thumbnail summary of the transaction. Huge value to the airport in the aggregate value. Certainly a number that's going to plug into your largest revenue stream at the airport, which is lease revenues. And so with that, the author on this item is your airport director, Mr. James Murawski. He's available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority Board of Directors approve entering into a standard sublease agreement for buildings 676, 677, and 678 by and between the SCLAA and the Boeing Company, and authorize the executive director to execute said agreement, and adopt resolution number SCLAA 25-011, amending the 2025-2026 budget, increasing budgeted revenue in airport account 4501111A -45200 by $9,881.40, and budgeted revenue in airport account 4501112A-45200 by $50,052.02, and decrease budgeted revenue in airport account 4501110A-45200 by $110,915.98.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, we'll do technical questions from council members. Councilmember Godian?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Metzler, it's my understanding that there's going to be some improvements done on this building as well. Can you just clarify which building it is and what those improvements will be?
Yes, I can. Largely, the improvements are to hangar 676, and the bulk of them are going to be electrical upgrades to the hangar, certainly for what Boeing is wanting to do. The electrical has been determined insufficient to handle some of their requirements, so we've agreed in this to basically help fund the installation of electrical system upgrades, HVAC system as an example, LED lighting fixtures, really to replace a lot of the old aged lighting fixtures, transformers, things of that nature.
Excellent. Thank you. That's all.
Councilwoman Jones?
And this will occur over a period of 4 years on the amount that we're crediting? Is it 3 or 4 years?
It's a 3-year rent credit up to the $3 million amount. And maybe Mr. Mirowski can speak to perhaps the scheduling or the expectation of when this work is going to start and be completed, presuming, of course, we sign the agreement here quickly.
So yeah, the rent credits will be basically September 1st when the lease is executed. They have 3 years to commence and finish these tenant improvements for the rent credits to come in. So after 3 years, they'll come to us with their paperwork. We'll do our post inspections. We'll also be working with them over the 3 years and ensuring that they're actually completing it and actually with the scopes of work, et cetera. And then those rent credits kick in for the next 3 years additionally after that. So they don't start until 2028 and they go for about 3 years to cover that amount that they spend, not to exceed that $3 million.
So the credits are in arrears? Or no?
So yeah, so once they spend that money, yes, correct. This would be, budgeted out 3 years from now and then going forward.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
That's it. Councilwoman Irving?
Any questions? Thank you.
Mayor Protem Harriman?
I have none, already been answered.
Okay. I have one. Mr. Metzler, and don't move, James. 522? It just caught my eye reading it. It says that they have permission to bring 2 planes, park them in front, do what they're gonna do. If they bring more planes, does that justify more rent, or no, it's just what they work on at a time? B, 1.1B.
And you're talking about the ramp space, correct?
Yeah, the ramp space, what they're calling it, cargo ramp space. So they're only allowed 2, or no, they can bring in as many they can work, or?
They can bring up to 2, but if they bring anything more than that or require extra space, then that would be additional space rent, or it can be for a charge per overnight fee for that aircraft.
Okay,
And so
okay, so just because,
sometimes, yeah, the wide body 777s take up a lot of space, but 737s are smaller aircraft. They could fit more in there, but it's a per aircraft basis.
so not only are we renting them, but we tell them how much they can move in there.
Correct.
Oh, good call. Okay, thank you, sir. That's it. It just caught my eye. Thank you. I'll invite a motion for this item.
Move that the SCLAA Board of Directors adopt staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda.
Second.
I have a first by Councilmember Jones, a second by Councilwoman Godan. Councilwoman Jones, comments on the pending motion?
I have none. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Godan?
Just good work to staff and Mr. Metzler and your team for getting this contract finally sealed up.
Councilwoman Irving?
I'd like to echo my colleague's sentiments. Yes, great job, everyone. Thank you.
Mayor Protem Harriman?
Yeah, good job, Mr. Metzger. Well, you're a bargainer, huh? 3%'s pretty good. That's all.
Okay, I'll say the same as that. Thank you, guys. Good job, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilmember Godin,
Yes.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Protem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item 22, Annual League of California Cities Voting Delegate and Alternate. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Yes, on an annual basis, the League of California Cities hosts an annual conference this year. It's scheduled to be in Long Beach on October 8th through October 10th. At that meeting, the league conducts a voting for items before the delegates. And so annually as well, the League of California Cities, as it's doing here, goes before its membership, asks for the cities to actually formally appoint delegates to actually participate in that voting event that takes place on the Friday morning of the conference. And so with that, this item's brought forward for your consideration. And with that, the item is authored by your city clerk. If there's any additional questions, she or I are available to answer them.
Thanks, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That your honorable city council designate the voting delegate and alternates for the League of California Cities Annual Conference and Expo, October 8th through 10th, 2025.
Thank you. At this time, we'll do technical questions from council members. Councilmember Godan?
I have none.
Councilmember Jones?
And thank you.
Councilmember Irving?
No questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
I have none.
And I have none. I'll invite a motion for this item. I knew that was going to happen. What happens now? We don't have a voting delegate?
I'm sorry, I missed, you're looking at me. Did I miss something?
This time, I'll invite a motion for this item.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
I move that the council designate Deborah Jones as the delegate and that we designate Tiffany Godan as the alternate.
I'll second.
Somebody going to ask if I accept? I do. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do,
We take a vote on that, yes.
okay.
Councilmember Godan,
Yes.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action to appoint Councilwoman Jones as our first delegate and Councilmember Godan as the alternate. Correct, ma'am? Is that good?
Yes, that's correct.
Item 23, discussion and possible action to present a plaque to Ray Wolf, outgoing Executive Director for the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. Member Jones, since this request was made by you, would you like to introduce this item?
Well, the request for this going on the agenda is not mine. It came as a matter of policy because we had the mayor and the mayor pro tem disagree as to whether or not a plaque should be presented for the then outgoing executive director of SBCTA. That said, I am happy to present if that's amenable to everyone else. All right. So when I requested this item, for me, I felt like this was just at the very base level what we do as professionals, and it certainly would be outside of what cities would do in terms of professional courtesies and decorum and et cetera. So I think I would like to go ahead and, since the council now has to vote on this, and we have some council members that certainly aren't familiar with all of the workings of SBTCA, and certainly the former executive director who was at the helm with SBCTA for 12 and a half years. So I'm going to just go over them very quickly so that I hope that this council feels confident in my view, doing the right thing and presenting or offering a plaque, though it be late, to Dr. Ray Wolf. So the projects, so his contributions that were direct to Victorville or directly impacting Victorville in a positive way, and certainly some other areas around us, are the I-15 La Mesa Nisqually interchange to the tune of $35 million, Yucca Loma Corridor, the Green Tree Boulevard extension to the tune of $23 million, the US 395 Phase 1 widening Palmdale Road to Chamberlain Road, $56 million, Bear Valley Road overhead at BNSF, $2 million, US 395 Phase 2 widening I-15 to Palmdale Road, $95 million. Future commitments under his helm, Mojave Drive widening US 395 to 7th Avenue, $20 million. Bear Valley Road widening Monte Vista to US 395, $5 million. TDA Article 3 bike pedestrian projects, Mojave River Walk multi-use bike facility, $179,000. Bear Valley Road, the bike path project to the tune of $527,000. Arrowhead Drive, 7th Avenue Bike Lane and Sidewalk Project, $250,000. Old Town Sidewalk Connectivity Project, $494,000. Village Drive Sidewalk, we know about that, $250,000. The Measure I pass-through to Victorville since he came on board in April 2012 was $65.8 million. I can go on and on and on, but suffice it to say, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that Dr. Ray Wolf's contributions under the helm to our city have been significant and certainly deserve a plaque. We've given plaques for far less than this. I would like to note as well that so many of our sister cities and cities throughout the region of San Bernardino County did step up and do presentations and honor Dr. Ray Wolf for his significant contributions to the entire region, certainly to Victorville. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I would certainly encourage the council to vote in favor of.
Madam Clerk, could you please read the recommendation?
Any action is at the discretion of your honorable city council.
At this time, we'll do questions from council members. Mr. Metzler, I understand we go with you, but with Mrs. Jones being on, Councilwoman Jones being on SBCTA, direct them to you or first, and then you'll.
Yeah, I have nothing further to add, so certainly to Councilmember Jones.
Thank you. Councilmember Irving?
I don't have any questions.
Councilmember Godan?
Just for clarification, Councilmember Jones, my understanding is that you're saying because of the Policy and Procedures Manual, Chapter 8, and then you're talking about B here, where plaques can be prepared for individuals who have acted in distinction with carrying out their duties or taken extraordinary actions. That's what you're referring to for the basis?
Sure, and when I originally requested it was, it was that, because I was driving when I was making the request, I was dealing with some family issues at the time, and so I requested a plaque just from my memory, but thinking that that was the most appropriate one. I think that would be the most suitable one, and it's certainly what all of our neighboring cities have done that and more. In fact, our neighboring city did a proclamation. That doesn't fit within our policy manual, but I think a plaque certainly does.
Those neighboring cities was in regards to this particular individual?
Oh, you bet.
And those were recently?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Mayor Potem Harriman?
To be clear, for his departure, it was in recognition of his solid work for their cities. Yeah.
Mayor Potem Harriman?
I would just like to echo the same thing as Councilwoman Jones. There's quite a bit of stuff that has gone on over the years, and I'm looking forward to more with the widening of Highway 395.
And the questions I have, you're well aware of this reading because you helped write it and everything. As a board, SBCTA is not run by Mr. Wolf, correct? SBCTA is voted on by a board of cities in San Bernardino County, correct?
So, ask that again.
As a board,
Mhm.
any money that has passed through, anything that is improved, any, i.e. Green Tree, Bear Valley, Mojave, the sidewalk, 395, all that was approved by a board, correct?
Well, it's the SBCTA, and then in large part, certainly those recommendations
That was, the question
go to the board from the
is
Mountain
all
Desert
of those,
Policy Committee.
is
But
all
no,
of
your question is not correct.
so they're not approved by the board?
They are.
He says everything gets approved?
May I finish?
It's a yes or no question.
It
Do
is
the
not.
boards?
It is not, because there's more to it than that.
Does-
So the staff does research much as the staff does research here before it brings something to the council. The same thing happens there under the leadership of that executive director and his team.
Exactly. So when Mr. Metzler brings something in front of us, that's why we ask him to give us what that, please bring it to us at the time. He tells us everything that's in front of us. We approve it. He doesn't. We do. That's why we're voted to sit here. Any money that's spent in the city, anything that's done in the city is done by the City of Victorville Council,
Okay,
not by him.
I understand.
So Mr. Metzler brings it to us and has his staff give us the report. Same thing with Mr. Wolf. He's never lived in the city of Victorville. He's probably been in the city twice in his whole entire 12-year tender on SBCTA. He did not say, let's give city of Victorville $62 million or whatever they gave us for all the bridges. Board staff brought that and said, it's costing 42 million. SBCTA, they're entitled to 22 million. This is what we recommend they get, not Ray Wolf.
So to answer your question, not, in my view, not, that is not a proper analysis. Because the person that is at the helm is responsible for carrying out the vision and direction. And what that looks like is largely up to the in this case, the executive director, to make those things play out. So absent his exceptional leadership, a lot of this might not have happened. And so in my view, it would be a bungling mess for this city to not recognize a man who served this community well over the course of 12 and a half years. I think it would be, in my view, an absolute disgrace to our city to not recognize someone who has worked hard for our community. And that's all I'm going to say, Madam Mayor, because this is bordering on such disgraceful behavior.
How is it disgraceful behavior? I'm asking you to justify, and that's why
I don't need to justify. Nobody justifies to this degree ever getting a certificate of recognition or a plaque. No, ma'am.
You wrote the thing.
I
How can
know.
you not?
I know.
It has to go through. I'm not going to get up here and argue this. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
please
invite a
do.
motion for this item.
I move that we present Dr. Ray Wolf with a plaque honoring his service, his well-deserved plaque. Thank you.
Second.
First by Councilmember Jones, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Harriman. Comments on the pending motion? Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, I would just implore my colleagues to do the right and honorable thing. It is a simple plaque. And to forego this publicly after the fact would be really show our city to be lacking in learnedness. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
I have no comment.
Councilmember Godin?
None, thank you.
Councilwoman Irving?
Well, yes, I do have a comment. Generally speaking, I'm in favor of always giving citizens, people plaques. I believe in that. But to give Dr. Wolf a plaque because he's done something extraordinary for the city of Victorville outside of the scope of his duties, I don't necessarily agree with that. Thank you.
And my comments go with yours. He did his job. He did his job, but he was hired to do what he got a day-to-day, what he got a paycheck for. Like I said, he came in the city of Victorville probably once or twice. And so we're going to start handing out plaques left and right once we go away from rules and laws that were written for this council. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote, please?
I'd like to amend my motion. However, I do need to recognize, since this is so far after the fact, that if the council approves this, it would have to be mailed to Dr. Wolf.
In light of the amendment, does Mayor Pro Tem Harriman accept the amended motion?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like me to take the vote, Madam Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Godin?
Yes.
Councilmember Irving?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
Yes.
Mayor Becerra? Motion passes with Councilmember Irving and Mayor Becerra voting no.
Thank you. We've now taken action to mail Dr. Wolf a plaque. Item 24, City Manager reports. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the council, we have a few items to report. First, on the animal services side of the house, the animal services team will have pets available for adoption or foster at the High Desert Farmers Market at VVC this Thursday, August 21st, between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. And then also, if you join us for a Clear the Shelter event on Saturday, August 30th, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. That's at the Animal Care and Adoption Center. That's an event that includes a light Western theme and no-cost adoptions for dogs and cats. It's a great opportunity for families to connect with the adoptable pets and support responsible pet ownership. On the building side of the house, you've probably noticed pretty significant construction at the southeast corner of Hesperia Road and Nisqually. Building permits were issued in the beginning of August for the construction of a new industrial manufacturing warehouse for American Jerky Company located near that intersection that I described. Right now, you're going to see pad grading underway. It's going to be about a 240,000 square foot facility once it's all said and done. On the environmental program side, the city's hosting its next community cleanup day. We're going to do Halloween edition on Saturday, October 25th from 8 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. It's a family-friendly. Costumes are encouraged. We're inviting residents, businesses, community groups to volunteer and help clean up our city. Then Victorville's July Free Dump Day, we had that. It's one of my two favorite days in the year. Both of them involve the Free Dump Day. And July's event was another great success. Total of 430 vehicles participated, helping residents safely dispose of over 110 tons of material. Thanks to the community's effort, 36 tons of that waste was diverted from the landfill through recycling and reuse programs. And then finally, on the fire side of the house in late July, Victorville responded to a 68-acre fire that you're probably familiar with adjacent to CEMEX near the Mojave River bottom. That fire impacted Burtec operations, power infrastructure, and our wastewater treatment pump station. With the support of our mutual aid agencies, the fire was successfully mitigated over a 4-day period. So special thanks goes out to the Public Works Department for assisting with road closures and the logistics throughout the event. And then separately, I've emailed you this in written form along with the listings of projects of interest for you to review at your leisure. That's all I have at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Item 25, discussion and possible action regarding upcoming agenda items. Councilmember Godin?
None, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Jones?
I have none. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Irving?
Nothing, thank you.
Mayor Potem Harriman?
I have none.
I have one or two. At this time, I would like to request an item be brought back at the next city council meeting for discussion and possible action to consider a salary adjustment for the city manager since we just completed his annual performance evaluation. This would include bringing a contract amendment for salary provision only so the council would wish to change the salary, then it could be effectuated at that time. Is there a first by second? Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote, please?
Councilmember Godin.
Yes.
Councilmember Irving.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And also, I would like to request to be brought back at the next city council meeting for discussion and possible action to consider celebration of California's 175th anniversary of statehood in conjunction with the state of California.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you take the vote, please?
Councilmember Godin.
Yes.
Councilmember Irving.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones. Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll do reports from council members. Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
I have nothing.
Councilmember Irving,
Nothing to report, thank you.
Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have just handed an official letter to our city clerk with copies in the folder to be distributed to the council, our city manager, and our city attorney. Tonight, I am formally announcing my resignation from the Victorville City Council, effective at adjournment, October 21, 2025 meeting. Due to a change in our family circumstances that require us to relocate, I must bring my time on the council to a close. This decision, while unexpected and difficult, reflects what is best for our family at this time. Serving as both mayor and council member has been one of the greatest honors of my life. I am deeply grateful for this community's trust and support. Together, we have navigated seasons of growth, strengthened the city's foundation, and built partnerships that will benefit Victorville for years to come. Victorville will always hold a special place in my heart. I am proud of all that we have accomplished, and I will continue to cheer on the city's progress from afar. Thank you all for your support. I look forward to assisting in any way needed to ensure a smooth transition. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Godin,
I have nothing to report.
and I have nothing. The time is 8:37 and this meeting's adjourned.